All right, dentists, I want to give you one of the most basic and most powerful pieces of advice that I can offer you to immediately improve your productivity, reduce your stress, and actually improve the quality of care that you provide. It's this: stop doing big fillings. That's it. Stop doing heroic, massive, wraparound composite restorations that are holding on for dear life. If you take nothing else away from this video, I want that single idea to stick in your head, because I guarantee that those big fillings are costing you more than you think in chair time, in stress, in post-op complications, and ultimately in the profitability and reputation of your practice. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into why doing these massive fillings is a losing proposition for you and for your patients. We'll talk about how to establish your own clear diagnostic red lines, how to confidently present the right treatment, and what to do when a patient says they can't afford what they truly need. My goal is to help give you the mindset and the scripting to stop compromising your standards. The core of this issue comes down to a simple principle. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Yes, with like modern bonding agents and composite materials, you can technically restore half a tooth or more with a direct filling. You can spend an hour meticulously sculpting and layering and creating something that looks okay for a moment, but you have to ask yourself, are you truly serving the patient in the long run? This is where you need to develop your own personal diagnostic philosophy, your own system. My approach is straightforward. I don't want to propose or perform any restorative dentistry unless I am very confident it'll last at least 10 years. That's my personal mantra. If I look at a situation, a tooth with undermined cusps, a cavity that's wider than it is tall, a massive existing filling that needs replacement, and I can't honestly say to myself, this has a great chance of lasting a decade or more, then I will not propose or do that treatment as a filling. Why am I so firm on this? Because when a dentist takes on a heroic procedure, trying to save a tooth with a massive filling that really needs a crown, it is almost always the dentist who gets burned in the end. The patient is not truly being helped. That massive filling will fail prematurely. A cusp will fracture, the margin will break down, or the whole tooth will crack. Now, the patient is out the money they spent on that big filling, and they still have to pay even more to fix the now bigger problem, which might even be an extraction and implant. Kicking the can down the road with a compromised, oversized filling does not help anyone. We need to remember the fundamental purpose of our materials. Fillings or direct composites are designed to fill small holes in teeth. They are fantastic for that, but they are not designed to restore significant structural integrity or to bear heavy occlusal loads or over wide spans, or even to hold a weakened tooth together. That is what crowns, onlays, and other stronger indirect materials are for. So stop trying to make a filling do a job it was never engineered to do. I'll say it again because it's that important. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So the first step is to develop your own personal red lines. You need to be able to look at a tooth and know based on your established criteria, in this situation, a filling will be predictable and meet my 10-year goal, but in that situation, it won't. So I am going to diagnose and propose a crown. What might these red lines look like? They could be based on classical principles like the intercuspal width of the preparation, the remaining thickness of the cusps, or whether any functional cusps are undermined. Once you develop your own diagnostic criteria, whether it's a 10-year rule or specific clinical parameters, the next crucial step is to not let anyone make you compromise on them. Not your patient, not your own misplaced sense of guilt, nobody. Because every time you compromise your clinical judgment to do a massive filling on a tooth that you know needs a crown, it will almost always come back and bite you. This leads us to the most common scenario where this compromise happens. You correctly diagnose that a tooth has a large decay and absolutely needs a crown. You present this to the patient and you immediately get the response, oh, I can't really afford a crown right now. And what do so many of us do? We find ourselves in a trap. We feel bad for the patient. We want to help, so we backtrack and end up doing that big heroic filling that we know we shouldn't. But think about what's really happening here. If somebody can't afford the right treatment, it does not mean that you should do the wrong treatment. Those are not the only two options. When a patient says they can't afford the crown and you know a filling is the wrong choice, some dentists then jump to another conclusion. Well, I guess we have to pull the tooth So now you have this bizarre situation where a patient needs a crown, can't afford it. So the next logical step seems to be extracting a tooth that is still structurally sound and restorable and certainly doesn't need to be pulled today. I see this all the time. If a patient can't afford the right treatment, we end up going down these strange rabbit holes of other treatments that don't really make clinical sense. In the future, I want you to see this situation as actually being very simple. Here is the new protocol. If a tooth needs a crown and the patient says they cannot afford the crown, that's okay. Then you do nothing. You heard me right. You do nothing. You don't do the wrong treatment. You don't do a compromised, oversized filling. You don't unnecessarily extract the tooth. You explain the situation clearly to the patient, saying something like, Mrs. Jones, based on the amount of decay and the weakened state of your tooth, the only treatment that I can confidently recommend that will be strong and last you a long time is a crown. I understand the cost is a concern right now. A filling in this case would be very likely to fail quickly and could lead to the tooth breaking, putting you in a worse situation. So what we can do is simply leave the tooth as it is for now. We can help keeping things clean and hopefully, help you get as much time out of your natural tooth as possible. And maybe in 6 months or a year, your financial situation will be different and we can place the crown then. Or if it remains asymptomatic, you can just wait until it eventually becomes a problem and then we can look at our options at that point. But doing a large filling now would be a disservice to you. Many dentists get into the trap of doing big fillings because they start by saying a tooth might need a crown, but they don't present it very firmly. They waver. And the moment the patient pushes back on the cost of the crown, the dentist quickly retreats and offers the big filling. Again, I will restate the principle. If a tooth needs a crown and the patient can't afford it, that does not obligate you to do the wrong treatment. Some people might argue, well, isn't it better to do a filling than nothing at all, just to stop the decay? And my answer is no. Not if the tooth structurally requires a crown. What happens when that tooth inevitably breaks a year after you place that massive filling? Now it definitely needs a crown and maybe even a root canal or a buildup that it didn't need before. And guess what? Now, not only will the patient still have a hard time affording it, but now their insurance company might deny coverage for the crown because you just placed a filling on that tooth a year ago. Now the patient is in even a worse financial and clinical spot and the tooth might not even be restorable. And who do you think that they're going to blame? Now, this approach of doing nothing when the right treatment can't be afforded might seem a little heartless to some at first glance, but I can tell you I have seen far too many situations where a well-meaning dentist compromises their standards because a patient can't or isn't willing to pay for the right treatment. And then that same dentist gets thrown under the bus when that compromised treatment fails, which it always does, every single time. In all my years, I have never heard a patient in that situation say, "Oh, thank you so much for trying to save me some money a couple years ago. You're a great dentist for trying." All I ever hear is the complaint. You just fixed that tooth a couple years ago and now it's already broken. Why can't you do better dentistry? It's just a no-win situation for you. The dentist will always get burned. So here's a summary of my advice. First, you need to develop your own clear, non-negotiable diagnostic criteria. Figure out in what specific situations you will confidently diagnose fillings and at what point you will personally have your red line and you'll diagnose crowns. Then you need to stick with it. No compromising. Second, feel free to share these criteria with your team, especially your hygienist. They can help hold you accountable. They can help pre-diagnose and prepare patients to understand and accept the treatment that is truly right for them. Sometimes you need your team to help hold you to your own high standards, especially when you're feeling pressure from a patient. If a patient can't afford the right treatment, the most ethical, professional, and ultimately safest option for both you and the patient is often to simply monitor the situation. Don't let their financial situation dictate that you perform substandard dentistry. So if you're tired of the stress, the failed restorations, and the patient complaints that come from doing heroic, oversized fillings, I urge you to adopt this philosophy. It will make your dentistry more predictable, more profitable, and you'll sleep a lot better at night knowing that you stood by your professional judgment. So now if you found this advice valuable and if you want more straightforward, no-nonsense strategies to improve your practice, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and take what you learned today about why you need to stop doing big fillings and consciously put it into action. Define your red lines and stick to them. Let's keep working together to make dentistry more fun, fulfilling, and rewarding.